One continent with Calebkoyo.
Now, since the civil war began in Sudan in April 2023, over 7.7 million people have been internally displaced, according to UN agencies. Sudan is currently facing the worst hunger and displacement crisis in the world due to 15 months of armed conflicts between Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, also known as RSF. The estimated death toll from the clashes is around 16,000, but is actually believed to be much higher due to the collapse of healthcare system in the country in the northeast of Africa. The International Organization for Migration, IOM, also is calling upon Africa to act fast and solve the situation in Sudan. The ongoing conflict in Sudan between Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces RSF has led to a severe humanitarian crisis affecting millions. Over 8 million people have been displaced and thousands have actually died. The country faces extreme hunger, with only a fraction of its population being able to afford a full meal, and 18 million people experiencing severe food shortages due to disrupted supplies and services. The UN warns of a potential hunger crisis, specifically in Darfur, amid fears of large-scale violence. Despite the agriculture minister downplaying the crisis, aid delivery is critically limited, specifically in areas under RSF control. Sudan faces a dire situation, with acute hunger affecting half of its population and 14 regions facing potential famine. This situation outlines the immediate necessity for conflict resolution and humanitarian assistance in Sudan. Now, President Joe Biden has announced that he will not seek re-election, putting an end to his half-a-century-long political career. This decision, made less than 4 months before Election Day, has shaken up the race for the White House. At 81 years of age, Biden faced increasing concerns within his party about his ability to serve and his chances of defeating Donald Trump in November. He has so far endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee in his place. This move clears the path for Vice President Kamala to secure Democratic presidential nomination. Harris will face significant challenges in her bid for the White House this fall. She will have to defy history in more than one way to become president.
The potential nomination of Kamala Harris as the Democratic candidate for president marks a groundbreaking moment in American politics. As the first female, African-American and Asian-American to potentially be nominated by a major party, Harris stands at the crossroad of history. Her diverse background not only shatters traditional barriers, but also brings a unique perspective that could profoundly influence the United States foreign policy, especially in relations to Africa. Harris' presidency could herald a new era of strengthened relationship between the U.S. and African nations. By prioritizing diplomatic and economic ties, her administrations could ignite new trade and investment opportunities, fostering mutual growth and development. Moreover, Harris' multicultural heritage could serve as a bridge, deepening cultural connections between the U.S. and African countries. Her advocacy for human rights and democracy is another cornerstone that could empower democratic movement across Africa, supporting initiatives aimed at strengthening governance and civil society. Additionally, Harris' commitment to improving healthcare and education reflects her approach to tackling global challenges through collaboration, suggesting potential benefits for African nations in these sectors. Kamala Harris' candidacy is not just a historic landmark for domestic politics, but also a beacon of hope for a more inclusive and empowering approach towards U.S.-Africa relations.
Now, from the USA, let's talk money. The 2024 UBS Global Wealth Report shows that there are at least 58 million US dollar millionaires worldwide, accounting for only 1.5% of the global adult population. The report surveyed 56 markets, which represent 92% of global wealth. The United States has the highest number of millionaires, with approximately 21.95 million individuals possessing wealth in excess of 7 figures. China comes in second, with around 6.01 million millionaires, followed by the UK with 3.06 million millionaires. France follows closely with 2.87 million millionaires, and Japan follows suit with 2.83 million millionaires. Compared to other regions, Africa has a limited number of millionaires due to various factors. The UBS Global Wealth Report emphasizes the complex landscape of wealth distribution in Africa, highlighting the small number of billionaires relative to the other regions amid significant economic challenges and disparities. Africa's economic situation is marked by inconsistent GDP growth, high national debt, and limited infrastructure, of course, in this continent, specifically due to financial problems that we have as a continent. The continent contends with economic instability, specifically in Nigeria and South Africa, due to various external and internal factors. Wealth in Africa is notably concentrated among a small elite, with the top 1% holding nearly 60% of the wealth, showcasing significant economic inequality. Resource-rich countries like South Africa, Angola, and Nigeria have not seen the wider distribution of wealth generated from natural resources. The continent's infrastructure deficits, amounting to around $100 billion annually, alongside low levels of foreign direct investment at around $35 billion in 2023, reflects the challenges of economic growth and wealth creation. Political instability and corruption further complicate the economic landscape. However, there are emerging signs of progress that suggest a potential increase in the number of millionaires attributed to economic reforms, technological innovations, infrastructure development, and ongoing investment flows. Despite facing numerous challenges, these positive trends offer hope for a more balanced and prosperous future for Africa. Now, on the record, I'm among those very many Africans who are not yet millionaires, but we are on our way. Let's still stick with the broadcast by talking more about Africa. Now, in several major African cities, young people are actually expressing their discontent over issues such as corruption, high living costs, and widespread unemployment. The protest initially broke out in Kenya last month, with young people, specifically Gen Z, engaging in 6 weeks of demonstration against a controversial bill that aimed to increase taxes. The protest resulted in at least 50 deaths. In response to the pressure from demonstrators who remained on the streets, President William Ruto retracted the bill and announced the shake-up of his cabinet. Kenya, as the dominant economy in East Africa, is facing challenges such as high cost of living, elevated food prices, and increasing unemployment among the youth. The country also carries a significant amount of foreign and local debt, using a substantial portion of its revenue to repay its creditors. The unrest quickly spread to neighboring Uganda, where citizens attempted to march to the parliament in the capital Kampala on the 23rd of July and 25th. Security forces responded with a strong crackdown, leading to detention of around 100 people. Political experts now term the protest as a reality check for African leaders. In Nigeria, young activists organized an End Bad Governance march on the 1st of August to protest against the country's severe economic issues such as the 34% inflation rate, rising unemployment, and increasing kidnappings. They demand lower living costs, enhanced security, government downsizing, and reforms in electoral, judicial, and constitutional areas. Human rights lawyer Enibehe Effiong criticizes President Bola Tinubu for delaying actions on this crisis. Previous protests have seen violent crackdowns, with Tinubu cautioning against a repeat of the 2020 NSAS protest. Experts like Professor Gift Murano and analyst Mamadou Thior highlight these youth-led protests across Africa as indicators of deep-seated economic and governance issues demanding urgent attention from leaders. These protests, amplified by social media, signal a widespread resistiveness among Africa's youth. They are underscored by warnings from figures like former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo about the dire consequence of neglecting youth grievances in this continent. Now, from that story, we are actually receiving some breaking news right now, and we understand that Ismail Haniyeh, the political leader of Hamas, has been reportedly assassinated in Tehran, Iran. Hamas, the group governing Gaza, has accused Israel of being responsible for his death. Haniyeh and one of his bodyguards were killed when the building they were staying in was struck. It was mentioned that Haniyeh was in Tehran to attend the inauguration ceremony of Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian. According to media reports, the Hamas leader was killed by an airborne guided projectile at a special residence for military veterans in northern Tehran. Israel has not commented on Haniyeh's death so far so good, and reports suggest that Israeli cabinet ministers were instructed not to comment. However, far-right heritage minister Amichai Eliyahu celebrated Haniyeh's death on social media platform X, stating that his death makes the world a little bit better. He actually posted that in Hebrew. Now, we understand that this story is still developing, but we want to bring in a very different perspective, because we understand that people like Hada Hashemi, who is actually a professor of Middle Eastern Studies at Georgetown University, actually believes that the killing of Ismail Haniyeh may escalate the region towards an all-out war, potentially impacting Africa. That potentially impact on Africa is what we want to look at right here on One Continent. The escalation of conflict in the Middle East, specifically involving Ismail Haniyeh, possesses significant indirect and direct threats to Africa, manifesting in various critical areas. The potential increase in refugee flows to North African countries stands out as a pressing humanitarian concern. This migration surge could strain resources and escalate tensions in the host countries. Economically, global energy supplies disruption might result in heightened challenges for African nations, impacting their economies broadly by enhancing energy costs and undermining economic stability. Security concerns are also paramount, with the risk of the conflict spilling over or inspiring militant activities within African borders. Such developments could destabilize regions and necessitate heightened security measures. Additionally, shifts in diplomatic alignments may force African countries into difficult positions, having to align with one side or the other, complicating international relationships and potentially fragmenting regional unity. To mitigate these effects, deploying a comprehensive approach is vital. Key to this is the pursuit of international diplomatic relations to promote peace and reduce hostilities. Equally important is the delivery of humanitarian aid to meet the urgent requirements of those impacted. On the economic front, strategies aimed at diversifying energy resources are fundamental to lessen reliance on unpredictable energy markets. Strengthened security measures are very necessary to preempt potential spillovers or inspire militant activities. Collectively, these strategies aim to tackle the immediate fallout from the conflict and address its root causes. Emphasizing collaborative international and regional responses is key to paving the way towards sustainable peace and ensuring that the threat to Africa is comprehensively mitigated. Now, from that sad story, we actually hope for peace in the Middle East as soon as possible for everyone's sake. Rest in peace to those who have actually lost their lives, and quick recovery to those in hospitals. Let's take the next 120 seconds to bring you up to speed with some of the biggest stories breaking right now. We understand that death caused by landslides in Ethiopia have actually risen to 257, but the final death toll is actually expected to be around 500, according to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Human Affairs. To South Africa now. When South Africa brought a case against Israel to the International Court of Justice (ICJ) late last year, its foreign ministry led the charge. Then Minister for International Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor, sat with the lawyers and experts in The Hague in January as the ICJ announced provisional measures in the case accusing Israel of committing genocide in its war on Gaza. Now, after a landmark national election in May that shifted the country's top governance, South Africa has a new top diplomat. But the big question is, will its foreign policy actually change? We're keeping tabs on that story. Now, from South Africa to the USA, will abandon Biden become abandon Harris? This week we have seen videos of pro-Palestinian activists who actually called for voters to abandon Biden over Gaza, now saying that their campaign is not over. Now that the US president is actually out of the election, they're turning their focus on the Democrats' likely candidate, Kamala Harris. We're keeping tabs on that story. Thank you so much for watching One Continent this week. Now to some fun fact. People are actually increasingly reliant on their devices these days. I'm talking about phones. But for some, the attachment can actually develop into something very serious. Those with nomophobia, an abbreviation of no mobile phone phobia, have a fear of not having their phones on them. They get equally freaked out when their battery dies or when there is no network coverage available. One 2019 study by UK firm YouGov found that 34% of men and 52% of women currently deal with some form of this condition. On behalf of everyone here at Collip Center, work on your nomophobia, please. This is for you and 200 million others. Work on your nomophobias and see you next week. Better person.